It is preparing to live stream the meeting.
All righty, are we good? Are we on go?
All right, it is directing now. All right, we are live, so I'm going to mute myself.
Ready. Awesome. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight for yet again one of our monthly health equity team virtual town halls. We always want to center the conversation around different aspects of COVID-19. We know, again, the pandemic has been one that has taken a toll on a lot of our lives. So we want to make sure when it comes down to the right information being released out to the community, we have professional experts and professionals that are really engrossed into specifically the topic we're talking about. And we have such a great treat this evening because we're focusing on mental health this evening. So as many of you guys know, Mental Health Wellness Month is in the month of May. And typically we always provide all those resources when it comes down to kind of helping us as adults kind of through whether it's workplace stress or home stress, work-life balance. And I think one of the main things that is missing with a lot of that communication in commemoration of this particular month is the fact that we're leaving out our young children, our youth, and realizing the fact that all of us have been impacted by this pandemic significantly. We have to make sure we think about our little ones and what they may be going through as well. So our team, the health equity team, decided let's go ahead and have a conversation around how this has impacted the youth. So tonight I have three amazing guests joining us that will kind of dive right deep into that. And with further ado, I will go ahead and introduce everyone. So for our very first guest, we have Dylan Moore. So Dylan Moore is a youth director at Elevation Church here in Gaston County. His previous education includes attending Hunter Huss High School. So again, he's a local native of the county, and he also attended Gaston College, and it was a graduate in 2017. Everyone, please give me a warm welcome and welcoming Dylan. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. All right, so next we have Reecey Barnett. So Reecey Barnett is also a lifetime resident of Gaston County. She obtained her BA in Society and Management from UNC Chapel Hill in 1991 and graduated summa cum laude from Capella University with a master's in mental health counseling in 2013. She is also a licensed clinical mental health counselor and qualified supervisor in North Carolina with the North Carolina Board of Licensed Clinical Health Counselors. She is nationally certified by the Board for Certified Counselors and has been inducted into the Chi Sigma Iota, the International Honor Society for Counseling Professionals, and became a certified clinical trauma professional in 2019. Ms. Barnett is currently employed at Contegra as a regional leader for school-based therapy. She has served children and their families in multiple capacities for over the past 20 years. She's a participant of the Early Literacy Collaborative in Gaston County and a board member of the Release Foundation. She also serves as the vice president of the Citizens Advisory Board and is passionate about mental health, loves doing community outreach, and is a strong advocate for children. Everyone help me in welcoming Miss Reecey Barnett. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right, and last but not least, we have Richard Bauer, AKA Ricky. So he's a senior associate within the Mental Health First Aid Coordination program, and he's a coordinator within the Community Engagement and Corporate Responsibility sector of Atrium Health. He's been there since 2018 and has a master's of social work from West Virginia University. He's a master's level social worker who has a passion for increasing mental health literacy in all the communities that he's a part of. He believes collaboration is necessary to improve health outcomes in his community. He has a passion for peer health education and has been a health educator since 2007. He has a background in human trafficking, mental health, HIV, and AIDS education. When he is not at work, he can be found on the rugby field where he is part of the Forward Pact. As an American Corps, I'm sorry, I can't even say it, American Corps alumni, community engagement and service are part of who he is. Since a member of 2016, he supported the mental health first aid programs at Carolina's healthcare system, which is Atrium Health, through teaching community members how to recognize signs and symptoms of mental health challenges and how to respond appropriately. He created the Mental Health First Aid SharePoint site that functions as the landing page for instructors to access materials and resources. And he is also a house participant for the Mental Health First Aid program with Atrium Health. Some of his core responsibilities include the Mental Health First Aid program, creating the yearly program plan, collecting data, and looking at all different ways that he can place all of his skills into the Atrium Health system. He is responsible for supporting over 100 instructors and facilitation of the Mental Health First Aid program at within the Central Piedmont region of North Carolina. He was selected to become a panelist to discuss the first aid, mental health facilitation, and personalization of the curriculum at NetCom 2020. NetCom is a national conference hosted by the National Council for Behavioral Health, which manages the mental health first aid program that he is a part of. He enjoys teaching mental health first aid in the community because he believes the only way to decrease suicide is through awareness and creating supportive communities. I'm sorry, that was a mouthful. Got a little tongue tied. But either way, thank you so much for joining us, Reecey, and everyone give him a round of applause as well. Awesome. So again, as you can see in everyone's background, they all work within the youth, with the youth, and all of that. So of course we have the experts here. So I wanted to kind of go ahead and get into the questions that we have for you guys. So in the very first question that we have here, what are the signs to recognize a child who suffers from anxiety? We know that some symptoms that are typically shown are not necessarily always inclusive of the things that are not shown. So that may include physical symptoms that you can't necessarily see, but the child can feel. So that can also include stomach pain, fatigue, and tiredness. So this was an example that our group came up with. What are some other signs to recognize a child who may suffer from anxiety just out of them saying, hey, mama, I'm kind of having stomach pain and I'm feeling tired or fatigued? And I'll just leave this open to anyone to respond to.
I'll respond. So some other not so common signs could be just anxiousness, nervousness, bedwetting, excessive worry, hypervigilance, hypersensitivity, wringing of the hands, difficulty focusing or being still, maybe some confusion, forgetfulness, appearing to be kind of numb or just kind of apathetic, clinginess, disruption in sleep pattern or appetite, socially being withdrawn, and not wanting to be left alone. And sometimes that can also include some irritability and some regression, going back to kind of like baby-like behavior.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Anyone else?
So somebody is saying, one of my colleagues was saying that the live event is not working.
Got you. Dandria, could you look into that for us to see if
You should be able to see it now. There were some technical issues, but you should be able to see it now because I can see it. But yeah, for some reason it didn't show, but I went and had to share it. So it's very strange, but I think you should be able to see it now.
All righty. Thank you so much. We apologize for that technical difficulty, everyone. So yes, but did anyone else want to respond to some of those additional signs that parents may not be aware of?
Yeah, so quickly. So I think the important thing to take away from when we are thinking about how to recognize signs and symptoms of mental health challenges is to kind of consider the fact that mental health challenges are common. And so the statistic is about 1 in 5 young people will experience a mental health challenge at some point in their life. And so when we are working with certain populations, specifically like adolescents, it could be hard to kind of see what is a sign of a mental health challenge versus what is just typical adolescent behavior. So when I think about things that we want to try to think about, we want to understand that in young children, a lot of the things that we might think of as kind of like fussiness or whatnot could also be signs of potentially developing something like anxiety. So for example, separation anxiety, so fear or anxiousness when away from the primary caregiver. It could also include things like phobias, social anxiety, so fear of engaging with peers, to just general worry about the future, to more specific things like panic disorder, so episodes of intense fear. And then specifically with adolescents, you could look for things like recurring fears or worries, changes in behavior, so increased irritability, and then also avoidance of activities, especially particularly activities that include peers or other social kind of situations. And then a little more things that you might be able to see a little more easily are things like substance use or other risky behaviors.
Thank you so much for that, Ricky. Awesome. All right. So the next question we have listed here says, this past year has been extremely tough on us all, from job furlough to job loss, the passing of family members, etc. It truly has had a toll on everyone, including the children in our lives. What conversation starters would you recommend for helping parents introduce the conversation of mental wellness to their child? And I'll start with Dylan. I'll start this question with you.
Yeah, thank you. So one thing that I've actually practiced with some of my youth at Elevation Gaston is a question of how are you on a scale of 1 to 10? A lot of people struggle with vulnerability, and when they struggle with vulnerability, they might be getting to the point where they're able to at least open up about a number. If you say, hey, 1 represents you're doing really bad, but 10 represents you're doing really great. Where are you on that scale? They might throw out, I'm doing good, but not the best ever. I'm a 7. Or life is really hard right now. I have a little bit of hope, but I'm a 4. And that gives you a little bit of just an insight about their situation without hearing any words. And if they are able to open up about that first, a lot of times it's difficult if you want to dive directly into what the issue is, and they don't want to be vulnerable at the start. But like you said, that is an icebreaker that I personally have found useful, because it's like, hey, where are you on this scale? They open about that number. I'm like, when you say that number, what comes to your mind? That is a practice I've been using. I've seen it be helpful, especially when you're starting to break the ice with either your own child or somebody within your influence.
Awesome. I love that. It's a simple way. Hey, how are you feeling? Give me a number. And it's kind of like going to the doctor's office. They normally say, what's your pain scale from 0 to, so it's a good way of looking at it like that, to kind of do a check-in. Thank you so much, Dylan. All right. So anyone else? Did you guys want to chime in there too? All right. Well, next, the next question we have includes many parents slash guardians were raised to embrace the stigmatization of mental health and were ultimately shamed into speaking on the matter. What advice would you give to these individuals when it comes to supporting their children in the quest for mental wellness? And I will propose this to all 3 of you guys. So whoever wants to start first.
I guess I can go. So I think that I want to think about this as caregivers leading by example. So I think it's really important for a caregiver to be aware of their own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. So think about like, how do you cope with challenging events? And then also thinking about talking openly about mental health. So think about, how do I speak about people who might have mental health challenges? So like people you come in contact with in the community, people that you see on the news, people that you see in popular TV or whatnot. And then also try to share stories of resiliency. So talk openly about how you problem solve and cope, and share those kinds of techniques and whatnot with your children and your other loved ones. And I think it's really about just spending quality time together. So think about what interests do your young people have, what interests do you share, and use that as the way to build a sustainable and strong relationship with the young people in your lives.
Thank you, Reecey. All right, Dylan.
Yeah, as soon as I heard this question, I immediately thought about a quote my pastor
So
once said.
I'd like to also add on to what Reecey said. Like I think it's important that we normalize mental wellness, particularly terminology that we use, like you said, and how you refer to others, and then just try to encourage them or do some education, get some education, right, about it. Make yourself aware of what mental wellness really is, and just stress that just as it is important to practice good physical health, it is equally as important to practice good mental health.
Yes, it's like going to the gym and working out. You have to practice your mental health just as much as your physical health. And as soon as I started reading this question, I immediately thought about a quote my pastor once said, Pastor Stephen. He said, if you knew all the details of how a plane works, you wouldn't want to fly on the plane. And I think the same thing about life. If we knew exactly how life panned out, life would be very intimidating, because oh my gosh, how are we going to accomplish all that? I don't have the resources for this, I have the resources for that. And I think that this generation has access to information much faster, and also more information than any other generation before, because of a phone, because of social media, constant internet. And they're able to literally find out anything that they want at any moment in just a snap of a finger. And so one thing that I would give the advice is like, hey, what you need for today is somewhere in around you within your circle. Tomorrow, you'll get what you need tomorrow. But for today, what do you have around you to support today? I think a lot of people are living in tomorrow when all we have right now in this very moment is today.
Oh, wow. Really great words to live by, for sure. Living in the moment. I love that. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you, everyone, for your response to that. All right, next. So throughout much of 2020, physical socialization came to an abrupt pause as a result of the pandemic, causing several children to shift to a virtual learning and communication format. Several additional social outlets for the youth, such as youth church services to sporting events, were canceled as the mandate for social distancing came into place. What has your personal experience been like in working with the youth, whether virtually or in person, since the start of the pandemic? And I'll go back to Dylan and start with you first.
Yeah. So essentially, one thing that we leaned into was something that we've been doing for a while already, which was community. So at Elevation Church, we have something called e-groups. These are small groups for all different ages, especially for youth. They're groups where they can come and hang out with people that their age, like you got like high school guys, middle school girls, high school girls. They can come together, make community, make friendships. And so when COVID started, we immediately shifted to exactly what we're on right now, Zoom. One of the things that our church globally has been doing before that also went online is something called Rhythm Night. This is something that we've been doing weekly, where we've been able to meet youth where they're at. So like a lot of youth from last year didn't have a prom. We threw an online prom for them. So we have pictures of people in their homes still dressed up in their prom attire, wearing a full suit, wearing a full dress. It wasn't normal, but doing what we could to just create an experience for them. And honestly, it was quite hysterical. It was really funny that like all these people are just dressing up for the heck of it, and also just enjoying it, making memories. One thing we did in the summer is something that we've been doing for a while, shifted up to online as well. Go online. This was through YouTube. It was a 72-hour live stream experience called YouthX. And so through this, it's a live chat. There were several youth from across not only just Gaston County, not just in the USA, but also just around the world tuning into this experience. They were going through YouTube, and we were connecting people to what we call e-groups. So our e-groups were on Zoom. I know that there was a girl that was not connected to our church yet, has never been, but she lives in Kings Mountain. She was actually living, or she was sitting on her bed, crisscross applesauce, when she was watching online, and she was watching throughout the entire experience. And there's just something that like impacted her, that she felt that she connected with. And so for her specifically, she was saying, I need community, like they're saying, but also was like, I want to give my life to Christ. Like there wasn't any lights, there wasn't a stage, there wasn't a pastor in the same room as her. She was by herself. And through the pandemic, we've been able to reach youth exactly where they're at. And now she is constantly involved. She is attending in person. She's serving in outreach events. I met her the week after at an outreach event in downtown Gastonia. It's not Hope for Gaston. I forgot the name of it, but it's right there on Franklin. And serving in an outreach event with her, like, hey, like this is working. And so that's another resource link that we have that we're going to throw into the chat as well. If you are interested in finding a group or finding a community, we have a link for that right there. But one thing we've leaned into is building community through Zoom, and also as time goes on and restrictions lessen, we're able to meet in person.
Awesome. So you guys have been able to pivot very well in making that transition from, being physically in person to on Zoom, which is really good. Awesome. Ricky or Ms. Barnett, did you want to chime in?
So we've been offering in-person therapy in the schools. And then we also offer teletherapy. But I also want to comment on some of the vulnerabilities I've seen since the children have returned to school. So in addition to just anxiety and, depressive symptoms, there's been some diminished social skills, communication skills, poor self-esteem, and just fear of abandonment and some role confusion, because some children now feel like they have to become caretakers or protectors. And so we've also had a very unique opportunity to also provide some education and awareness to teachers and families so that they feel better equipped to support the children through this change.
Awesome. That's great. What are, speaking to those resources, what specifically did you provide them, Ms. Barnett, when it came down to those parent resources? Were there handouts that talked to kind of like what we're talking about now, how to start the conversation? Or was it more of just speaking to what anxiety, depression, and different, mental wellness conditions are, or what specifically?
Different things, just based on needs, some being charts and schedules, some being how to do family covenants, some being some family rules, just so that everybody feels safe, and how to be the safe space and be cohesive. Some coping skills, like deep breathing and relaxation techniques that the child can use at home and incorporate their family with. And then like just some local resources. So like NAMI for North Carolina, because Gaston County does have a chapter here, and things like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so on to the next question. So health experts have alluded to the fact that a decrease in a child's participation in normal activities that bring them joy, such as speaking to their friends, going outside to play, and playing video games, is a potential reflective symptom of depression. What tips would you provide to parents in helping to recognize this shift in behavior early on, as well as ways in which they can support their child during this time? And I will start with Reecey.
So I really think that when we think about how to support a young person, one of the first things that we can do is learn to recognize the signs and symptoms of mental health challenges. So that could be as simple as taking a youth mental health first aid class, which, shameless plug, Atrium Health teaches 3,000 people per year. And so that's a great way to start somewhere, right? I also think that, we need to focus on the consistent emotional support. So thinking about how do you connect and how do you spend quality time together as a family? So is this things like, consistently having family dinners together? And then also using those opportunities to check in, but not always necessarily checking in about mental health or mental wellness per se, but checking in general, right? And so those regular check-ins can then help to allow for opportunity to check in when you need to about mental health and mental wellness. And then also just to note that, we want to model these healthy behaviors. So for example, how do you take care of yourself? How do you model self-care for a young person? What language do you use around mental health? What language do you use around feelings? And then if you do suspect that you are concerned about your child's mental well-being, reach out to your child's pediatrician, set up that connection, and then explain to your child, like, hey, I think we would both benefit if we talk to the doctor about how we're feeling, right? And so we want to model that as much as possible so that it's not something scary for a young person to think, hey, I need to talk to a doctor. And when we talk to a doctor about our bodily issues, so like broken arms and whatnot, stomach pains, we also want to share with them our mental health conditions. And so how are we feeling? How are we processing? Things like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. All righty. Did anyone else want to chime in on that specific question? All right. All right, next. So what are some easy everyday activities that families could adopt to their routine to help support a child suffering from mental wellness? And we heard some of these things already that Reecey had brought up, and even Ms. Barnett talking about the breathing exercises. But what are some other things that families could ask you to provide resources for them to do as far as that's concerned? And I'll leave this open to everyone. So I'll start with Dylan.
Okay, so first off, we're in Gaston County. There's something in our backyard called Crowder's Mountain that is absolutely perfect. So this is a great free resource as well. If you're very cautious about what is happening with COVID-19, this is also a safe alternative as well to be outdoors. But also it's really good for the soul. One thing that I've been processing on the soul side of it is nature doesn't have an ego, and also it doesn't care about yours. So if you put up your phone for a little bit, take your family with you and just go to nature and just spend time together outside, that's something that can also overall help mental health as well. Especially it's a good way to have conversations. It takes about an hour to get up, an hour to get down, and then you enjoy the view. And so definitely something, taking advantage of what we have in our own town is incredible.
Awesome. I totally agree. Going outside helps us all, that fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What about you, Reecey?
So again, and maybe I'm sounding like a broken record, but it's about modeling the importance of taking care of self. So, for example, playing sports together. So model that healthy behavior. Take advantage of things like Crowder's Method, right? Promote a sense of connectedness. So either with family or with peers, right? So we want to create opportunities for that connectedness. So family board game nights, smoothie nights, even shutting down the work laptop and just going for a walk together can be super beneficial. And if you don't have a lot of time, a walk can be 15 minutes or it can be 2 hours, depending on how much time you kind of want to put into it. So these are simple things that we can all do to help create healthy activities and then also a sense of connectedness.
Awesome, great. All right, Ms. Reecey.
So, and I think this depends on age, but when you're younger kids, you want to have like a routine to set some expectations. And kids don't have the ability to really express themselves like we do. So you have to be really observant to notice changes. I think it's important to stay calm and to speak in a calm tone. And if you see that the child is distressed, then give them time and space to calm down and ask permission to talk or to touch before you just jump in. Focus on what they can control, because a lot of them feel like they don't control anything right now. And eliminate stressors whenever possible.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, so with a year of virtual learning under their belts, many children will now have to transition back into normalcy within the classroom. What advice would you provide to parents who have children who are anxious about transitioning back to a masked learning environment full time? We know that our mandates and the lot that was attached to some of the restrictions and making sure that we have masks are starting to lift with COVID vaccinations being in place. But we know when it comes down to especially younger children, those under 12 who aren't eligible to receive their vaccination, we know that the push is going to be that they remain masked while they're there. And part of the reason why we want to ask this question is because we have had several community members speak to the notion of bullying and how this is something they do not want to become an issue when children return back, especially for those children who have to remain masked versus those who are not. So what are some just tips that you can say to the parents about whether they're anxious about their children maybe encountering that or the children themselves? And I'll start with Ms. Barnett.
So back to what Ricky said, I think doing check-ins is going to be very important, either during dinner or just even in a car ride, by asking open-ended questions like, what was the best part of your day? Or what was the most difficult part of your day? Validating feelings, right? Just so that they know that it's safe to talk about them. And then when you identify like a problem or some bullying, working with them collaboratively so that they feel empowered to address the issue. And then also helping your child see that this is an opportunity for them to be a health ambassador and that they can be a role model and champion, just good mental health or just overall healthcare and wellness.
I love that. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. All right, Ricky, you're next.
So I think it's important. Ooh, did you hear that like loud echo? Can you still hear me? Okay, sorry. I got like bad feedback, so it was kind of really loud. So I think it's important for caregivers to kind of think about what sorts of things might cause a young person anxiety. So, for example, there could be the fear or worry of falling behind, right? The worry of not having friends, and then the worry of getting someone sick, so either the self or another family member. And so sometimes, we as adults, we have to try to help process these kinds of feelings. And the only way that we will know what someone is feeling is by checking in. And so we do have to listen and then provide that consistent reassurance. And then I also think that it's important to try to include the young person in developing those healthy habits. So for example, if create a hand washing routine, right? And then also, if your child does have to wear masks when the mask mandate is a little more less restrictive, I think it's important to create solidarity. And so if you have a young person that needs to wear a mask, then maybe you also consider wearing the mask out in public too, so that you can create that solidarity with them. And then also practice wearing the mask correctly, because if you're not wearing it correctly, then it's not super effective. So I think those are some good ways to start. Continue to check in.
I love that about just kind of championing it, the fact that if your child is doing it, that you should do it too, having that same behavior being matched. I mean, we say the same thing with healthy eating, right? You can't tell a kid, hey, I need you to eat your vegetables, but then you're not even touching a piece of broccoli, right? So you're right, just having that that mirrored image is great. Dylan?
Ricky, that was great. I think the best thing that we could do is set the great example and say, hey, like, I know that this is something that you're going to have to do, but this is something that I'm wearing as well, just because setting the culture for our family, whether it's a household with two parents or a household with a single parent, is saying, hey, like for us, we are going to wear it. You don't have to be alone in it because I'm in it with you. And so essentially when I saw the question, that was the first thing I said is, it's like, if you're a parent and you have a child, they're automatically not alone. So the first thing you can say is, hey, you're not alone. I'm in it with you. Like, I'm wearing the mask too, because it can be a very uncomfortable thing, especially with bullying. But if you say that you're in it with them, it's going to help them out in the long run as well.
I agree. And what's funny, now we're talking about parents doing the same thing as far as showing solidarity. I think it's the same should go for siblings as well. If you have older siblings and, another, maybe in the same school, but maybe that older sibling doesn't have to wear one, but the younger one does. So then you kind of showing, we're both going to do this together, because we know that there are children with autoimmune diseases and different types of, vulnerable, immune system. So we want to make sure that they don't feel isolated or feel as if they're different for any reason or behind. A lot of kids can feel like, well, everyone else has been able to take their mask off and burn it in, the bonfire, but I still have to keep mine on. And so we don't want them to feel as if, them keeping themselves, safe and healthy is, a downer or a down point. So I love that too. All right, so last but not least, we have a question that says, as we continue to shift into more flexible conditions, and again, going to mask and those mask mandates are lifted, what advice would you have for parents and children, again, like we just talked about, with vulnerable immune systems who may still be advised to continue to wear them? So kind of similar into what we just talked about, but more for those specifically who may not ever be able to be without some type of barrier or something that, again, because until we all are vaccinated, there may still be a risk. So how do you actually, I would say, have that conversation? And I'm gonna start with Ms. Barnett, since I know you work specifically in the schools.
So I feel like that's kind of redundant, because here is where I definitely think that we should model it, the behavior, and wear the mask. Again, just stressing, I know it's difficult, but let them be a role model and be a health ambassador. Because it's something, unfortunately with immune sensitivity, that's not something they're going to be able to change. Right. So how do you make, lemonade from your lemons? So let's look at something positive. So I just, making them feel like, what, I can represent this, I can champion this cause through my example.
Awesome. Any other ideas from the group? I know it kind of probably falls in line with what we just talked about, but any other ideas at all?
I would say, like you said, it does tie into the last question as well. And a few questions ago, like Reecey pointed out, going to talk to a doctor and what does that look like on the medical scale. One thing that I personally did, so I'm not saying anything I haven't done, but one thing I personally started doing in December of last year, I did it once in high school. Mm, it was challenging, but I eventually got to the point in December of last year, the point of the pandemic where I knew it most, counseling. Counseling. It is 100% okay to go see a therapist, and nothing has to be wrong to go see a therapist. Just because you go to counseling doesn't mean you're at the end of your rope. It's okay. You can have the space to be vulnerable, especially if they don't want to be vulnerable with you. Maybe as a parent, vulnerable with you as a parent, and so maybe they'll go and open up to a stranger on some on a scale that they're able to help dig into their mind, because I mean, it's hard. If we have to wear a mask, then we have to wear a mask. And I believe that a counselor can help dissect the mind a little bit and like see where a lot of the frustration might be coming from and how we're able to control that frustration before it becomes anger and before that becomes dangerous to the people around us. And so I would say definitely counseling.
I am so glad that you brought that up because I was hoping that would come up in this conversation. You're right, Dylan. At the end of the day, no one on this call nor in this world is perfect. And we all have our bad days. And sometimes we do need assistance from someone outside of our family and friends who has a very generalized perspective. And they're not going to, feel as if, they're more tied to any feelings attached to what you're going through because they're the expert. And one thing I actually found out recently, so for anyone who's watching this that's a Gaston County employee, our EAP actually is something that you can utilize as well with your children. So it's not just for you, but your children can utilize it as well. And if I'm not mistaken, anytime there's a new issue, you can get additional 5 free sessions. So again, if you're a county employee, you get this right off the bat. Think about other employers. I'm sure, Reecey, you're shaking your head. I was going to ask, does Atrium do something similar like that for you guys too?
Yeah, we have a very great EAP system, and you can utilize it even for a variety of things. So, for example, let's say you're a manager and you're like, how do I support someone on my team? You can call them and get support that way. It could be for life events. I think it's one of the most underutilized employee benefit across the board. And a lot of people don't even know about it. And so if you do have access to EAP, and the great thing about EAP is like once you complete your sessions, that person can help refer you to someone in the community that can meet your needs.
Awesome. I love that. So yes, I agree. Again, at the end of the day, it's something we should start normalizing. And like we talked about a few questions ago, that stigmatization around mental wellness, the more that we can help support our kids and showing them that it's okay to speak to somebody about what you're going through, or like all 3 of you have said, modeling it yourself. If you're going through something and you're feeling down and you're feeling like I'm overwhelmed, everything with this pandemic is doing the most, and I really need some type of relief. That's the perfect way to model that, is to actually show your child it's okay. Mommy or daddy is going to therapy. Whatever it is that you need to do, and even speaking about self-care and ways that you can start to put yourself first, because you're looking at, okay, what do I need to do to help, like Reecey talked about, putting what I need first. A lot of times modeling even that. And we talked about that on our last town hall out. A lot of times as parents, we'll kind of just put ourselves on the back burner and just kind of keep going. And then we're in burnout mode. And then we're looking around and, we're looking for the cup to be empty, and it's all the way, it's either half full or all the way emptied out. And so that's one of my favorite sayings, is you can't pour from an empty cup. So you have to be able to fill yourself back up. And no one can do that but you. So I do love the fact that you guys put that out there. The only last thing I wanted to ask you guys were, what are some additional tips that you would say as far as when we're talking about self-care, ways that we can help to show our kids self-care? I know for me in particular with my daughter, whenever I want to show her, hey, mommy needs to be able to take care of herself in this moment, one of my favorite things to do is to go out into the yard and to just be on the porch. And like you guys talked about, whether it's hiking crowders or literally just being in nature, that's like, I need 15 minutes just to kind of go out and just be with myself, hear the birds, hear the rain. That's one of the best times to go out on the porch when it's screened in, because you can see the rain, you can hear it, and it's all well, but you're not getting wet, right? So what are some other things that, even if you yourself do it, as far as self-care or kind of getting yourself through a stressful situation, that you would recommend for children as well? And I will start with Dylan.
So one thing that I've been processing recently is, this is the perfect time to open about it as well. And I think that this is a good tip. It's also a good icebreaker if you would like to have this conversation with your children. But is the question, what does your soul love? And whatever that is, find about 5 things, do more of that. Whether it's hiking, listening to music, game night, whether it's just walking around the neighborhood, watching TV, going to the gym, treating yourself, go to McDonald's, whatever your soul loves, and whatever, like, do more of it. Like, do what makes you happy. Like, it's that simple. Make yourself a priority, especially if you're a parent. I could see how that could be challenging. I believe my mom is watching. If she is, love you, Mom. But one thing that she has always done is she's always made her children, me and my brother, a priority over herself. And I believe that that's a common thing amongst a lot of parents. But make yourself a priority, because you cannot lead your own children if you have an empty cup. So do what your soul loves. Specifically, 30 minutes before this call started, I was at the Warlick Family YMCA, out on the patio, getting a self-tan, going to work out. And that's what my soul loves, is just going to the gym and spending that time alone.
Awesome. Yes. So great. So great. And that vitamin D, the natural vitamin D, is amazing, right? All right, Ms. Barnett.
So what I tell people a lot of times is make it part of your schedule. Make it an appointment like you do anything else, because it's so easy for us to push things to the back burner. And you can build that in with your kids too, and say, okay, every day, like the first 30 minutes we come home, we're going to do what we enjoy, what we relax, what makes us feel happy, what makes us feel safe. So, like I like coloring, or I like walking, or just listening to music. But okay, mommy's going to do her thing and you're going to do your thing. But definitely make that a priority, and protect that time like you do any other time.
I love the fact that you said that, because you're right. When it comes down to those meetings our boss Nina said, or even this Zoom call, we're going to make ourselves all the way available for them. But then sometimes it's like, I really could just use about 15 minutes to just literally sit in the tub, and do nothing before I actually bathe. You know what I mean? Instead of just rushing through it, especially if you're a parent, you know what that's like. And you're right, making yourself a priority. I love putting yourself on a schedule. So remember that, parents, go out there, even if it's 30 minutes a day, put yourself on your schedule, put yourself on your calendar and put it on your phone to give you a reminder. So awesome advice. Ricky?
So I think it's important to define self-care. So for when I think about self-care in mental health first aid, we talk about self-care as the practice of taking action to preserve or improve one's own mental or physical health. And then I think the reason it's important to define it is because it can feel so vague, right? And so oftentimes we ask, what do people do for self-care? And they always tell us, oh, nothing. And so then I ask, the next thing that we ask is, well, how do you know when you need to refuel? And so I always share how I know that I need to refuel is there are 2 types of cleaning that I participate in. there's the cleaning that I just enjoy cleaning my house, like, having order. And then there's like Ricky's angry cleaning. And usually what that means is like, I am trying to be as loud as possible so both my roommates can hear me. And I let them know that I cleaned up their mess. And I let them know so that they know that I cleaned up something that I shouldn't have cleaned up. And then I tell them about it so that I know that they know that I know, right? And so when I get to that point, I know that there's something going on, right? And that I need to be honest with myself and check in and then engage in some self-care. And so Dylan kind of defined it as doing something for your soul. So I always think, well, doing something that grounds me or connects me back to myself or the self that I want to be present in the world. And so whenever I need to do self-care, I kind of take it kind of a few ways. Like, is this like a 15-minute self-care where I just need to focus and kind of reground myself before an event? Or is this like I've had a long day and now I need like an hour self-care, right? And so I really appreciate the idea of protecting that time, right? And I think that people need to do that. Even if it's only 15 minutes, we can take that 15 minutes just to reground ourselves, and then hopefully you can then invest some more time later when you have a little more time. So I think that's kind of how I view self-care.
So Crystal, can I elaborate a little bit on what Ricky said? Because as you can tell, I'm a big proponent on self-care because it's just necessary, right? So, so just kind of building on some things he said. First of all, I think I'm going to incorporate some things also that Dylan said. I think it would be a great practice, right, for every day for us to determine like, what's my mood and how do I feel on a scale of 1 to 5. Right? So that we can just kind of figure out like, where are we? And then another good tip is learning how to be self-aware and read your body, because your body will let you know when you need to refuel. So maybe taking the time to learn for ourselves and then teach our children, like, how does your body tell you when you're tired? Do you get a headache, or do you get tightened, neck muscles or shoulder muscles, or, are you grouchy or irritable? But just learning and becoming more self-aware and listening to when your body is signaling you like it's time to shut down and refuel.
There's one more thing I want to add exactly to that, because yes, caring for yourself is incredible, is the idea that self-care needs to be a priority, not a luxury. If you're waiting for a special day to come to take care of yourself, to go get your nails done, to go hike a mountain, to take a nice hot bath, whatever you feel cared for when you do it for yourself, do more of that. Make it a priority, because don't wait until you break. Don't wait until you just hit the breaking point that, now I need time for myself. I was like, no, make the vacation a priority. I know that that's difficult, more said than done for a lot of families due to financial things, but find some stuff within your circle that is free, that costs no money, and make yourself a priority. Don't make it a luxury.
And another motivator for that, Dylan, is realizing that self-care is a reflection of how you value yourself.
I am so sorry, you guys. See, now I'm gonna need a little self-care after this, okay? My apologies. My Wi-Fi kind of just totally said we're not working anymore. So anyway, I kind of miss what you guys are saying at the end, but I am sure it's amazing information and everything like that. So yes, making yourself a priority, making sure that you implement self-care, and being that model for your kid is the greatest thing you could do at the end of the day. Because again, if you don't even know how, I love the fact that you guys said responding to your body, right? You don't even know why you have this headache every time you're dealing with this certain coworker, or when you're dealing with a certain client, and then you're starting to stress out and you don't even know that that's a symptom of being stressed. So when your kids at school and they're dealing with a teacher that isn't the greatest, And then maybe they didn't make the basketball team that they thought they were going to. And now they're dealing with that same symptom, and then they don't know that they're going through it. And I can be honest, it took maybe until about 5 years ago for me to even recognize that about myself. You know what I mean? To start noticing when I'm feeling anxious, what's going on with my body. I just thought it was just normal. And then I went to the doctor and they were like, no, this is something else. You know, your stress is attached to this stomach pain you're dealing with. You're thinking you ate something bad. And that's not it at all. It's the fact that you're stressed. And I love the fact that doctors, medical doctors that look at that is something to ask first too. Because that's one of the only doctors I've ever had recently said that to me. He was like, yeah, we could probably get you, you know, some acid medicine and everything, but let's talk about what's really going on with you. And so I was shocked to even have him do that. And I was like, well, yeah, you know, this is going on and that. And he was like, let's work on the stress management first. I'm not giving you anything until you can at least work on that. And then if that doesn't work, then we'll prescribe something, you know, and trust me, it worked. It really did. It had to take that internal work. So again, I thank you guys so much for joining us today, talking about this very important conversation. I apologize for all the technical difficulties that have happened. But like we talked about, no one or nothing is perfect. So we're going to give ourselves some grace, right? Give ourselves some grace. And again, the one thing I wanted the audience to know is that these three individuals have a wealth of knowledge and they have resources. So what we're going to do, because I do not want to mess up the live again, after this is over, when this is posted to our Facebook page, we're going to make sure that we have our marketing team have an additional post with all of the resources that I was planning to provide and any that they may have had available for you guys too. So then that way you have it all together on our Facebook page. So please go back there and view everything that these lovely individuals will be providing, as well as myself. And again, I thank you so much for joining us, and I will see you next month at our next town hall. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Alrighty. Hi, Dandria.
Hi.
Is everything good as far as the video?
It just came back up. My internet glitched again. I was watching and suddenly you froze.
Oh, I think it was mine. Because I think my internet had automatically went out. I had to go connect it and everything all the way over again. So I think you're okay.
All right, so I'm